Hello and welcome to the 6th episode of Devlog. In this series, we're building an ambitious payroll SaaS from scratch all the way to our first customer. In this episode, we're going to implement some of the basic payroll logic. Alright, let's start off by taking a look at what I've been up to since the last episode. Firstly, Nobility Pay is now officially incorporated. How exciting is that? This will allow us to start applying for business grants. Secondly, after each episode, I go back and clean up the code we wrote and touch things up. Notably, I've improved the navigation menu by adding a menu for everything related to the user profile. Clicking on the profile icon now displays a menu with options to see your information, toggle the privacy mode, which we will work on later, reset your password, and sign out. If this design looks familiar to you, it's because I snatched it from Flowbyte, and their components are used by various websites. 10 out of 10 would recommend Flowbyte. I also set up localization for client components so the menu is translatable. Here it is in French. Lastly, I touched up the salary history component we worked on last time. The corners are now straighter and the shadow is lighter. Alright, let's dive into some more payroll logic and start setting up the basics for pay statements. I divided this ticket into a few parts, but before we start, let's take a look at the overall design. This ER diagram represents the different models in our database system and their relationships. This ticket proposes 3 new models: department, pay period, and pay statement. The department model is quite easy. It consists of an ID and a name. Each department will have 1 or more employees, but will belong to only one organization. The pay period model consists of an ID, start and end dates, and the period number. Each organization will have many pay periods, and there will be many pay statements for each pay period. Lastly, the pay statement model consists of an ID, the base salary, benefits, deductions, and the net pay. Each user will have multiple pay statements, and each pay statement will point to a single pay period. Benefits and deductions can be represented by numbers for now, but will likely be more complicated in the future. Alright, now that we have it all planned out, let's start coding. Alright, first up is the department model. We can use bits and pieces of various models to construct our new one. The ID, name, and the user and organization relationships. We'll also modify the user and organization model to support departments. And that's it. Let's clean up the code and run migrations. Perfect. That was too easy. Alright, next up is the pay period model. While we're here, let's clean up the schema file by grouping up all of the enums. The pay period model represents timeframes within the year, so it will have start and end date properties. However, we also want to keep track of what period number we're on, so we'll add a number property as well. The organization relationship will be the same as we've been doing it so far. Let's push up these changes and then implement a pay frequency property on the organization model. This will represent at what frequency employees will be paid: weekly, bi-weekly, semi-monthly, or monthly. Alright, that's it for this ticket. Now let's create an endpoint to actually generate pay periods. Listen, this was a tedious process and took me quite some time, so let's just go through the final code together. We have a post endpoint for API generate periods that accepts an organization ID. If the organization already has pay periods for the current year, we return an error response notifying the user. Otherwise, we find the organization model and pass it to the generate pay periods function. This function begins at the start of the year and generates pay periods until it reaches the end of the year. Disclaimer: the weekly and bi-weekly logic in this function is not accurate. I've created a ticket to handle this later and have removed the logic from the function for now. So for semi-monthly, if it's before the 15th, we set the start and end to be the 1st and the 15th. Otherwise, the start and end are the 16th and the last day of the month. For monthly, we simply set the start and end to be the 1st and last day of the month. At the end of each iteration, we push this period to the pay periods array along with the period number. And then we just add a 1 day to the current date. After we generate periods for the entire year, we use Prisma to create the database entries. Alright, let's test it out. We have our frequency on semi-monthly. I have created a button that lets us hit this endpoint from the app, and doing so, we can see that 24 entries were created, 2 for each month, and they start and end on correct dates. The 1st, the 15th, the 16th, the 31st. Dude, that is so cool. I love that. One potential caveat with this implementation is that we do not consider the organization's time zone when generating pay periods. Let's make a note of this for the future by creating a ticket. Lastly, the pay statement model. This will potentially be the most complicated model in our app, but for now, let's keep it simple. A base salary, benefits, deductions, and net pay all stored simply as decimals. Each pay statement belongs to one user, so we can define that relationship. And each pay statement also belongs to one pay period, and we can define that the same way. We can clean up the spacing and push our code to main. Listen, this ticket had ambitious hopes of generating pay statements as well, but that's a bit too much for now. We'll mark this as done, but we can revisit pay statements very soon. And hey, that's it for this episode. We set up the basics for departments, pay periods, and pay statements. We even created an endpoint for generating an organization's pay periods with support for monthly and semi-monthly frequencies. In addition, Nobility Pay is now officially incorporated, which means we can start applying for grants. We're also making the app prettier by the day with a new and improved profile menu that cleans up the navigation. I hope you enjoyed this episode. In the next episode, we'll take a break from database models and put together some fun features. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to subscribe to keep up with the progress and see where this project goes.